As we're learning, a second U.S. aircraft carrier is being sent to the Middle East. And here, days earlier, suggested another round of talks with the Iranians was at hand.
317 local Arabian Sea. Right now, floodlights paint the flight deck of USS Nimitz in cold white stripes. Sailors in cranials and float coats move like ants around steel canisters the size of phone booths. They think it's another high-tempo resupply evolution. They have no idea what's about to hit them. Because 41 minutes from now, an Iranian command cell will press execute, and the Gulf will turn into a storm made of metal, flame, and radar ghosts. Listen closely. You can hear it before you see it. The low mechanical growl of a crane slewing over the deck, the sharp clack of chains, the distant whine of an F/A-18's APU spooling, and the ocean itself, black and flat, slapping the hull like a slow metronome. The ship is moving at 18 knots. The air is humid enough to taste. And beneath your feet, inside the belly of that carrier, the United States is loading the future. Not because it wants war, because it can't afford surprise. Nimitz isn't alone out here. She never is. Within a few hundred miles, an entire moving ecosystem is arranged around her. Guided missile cruisers and destroyers with Aegis radars rotating like unblinking eyes, attack submarines running silent below the thermal layer, tankers and logistics ships feeding the beast, and combat air patrols orbiting in dark arcs overhead. But tonight is different. Tonight, the ship's routine has been replaced by urgency. The operation has a name that won't exist on any public record, just a phrase passed between secure circuits. Emergency missile loadout. Hundreds of rounds, multiple types, multiple missions. The kind of resupply you only do when someone, somewhere, has decided the next 72 hours could rewrite maps. Imagine you're standing on the catwalk, looking down at the weapons elevators. You watch a canister rise, dripping seawater, painted the same sterile gray as every other piece of naval hardware. To a civilian eye, it's just a box. To an adversary, it's a question. How many? What kind? And who are they aimed at? The geopolitical background is real, even if what happens next is not. The Persian Gulf is a pressure cooker. Narrow shipping lanes, overlapping missile envelopes, surveillance drones crisscrossing airspace like gnats, and a constant contest of will between U.S. naval power and Iran's regional deterrence posture. Iran cannot match a carrier strike group ship for ship. It doesn't try. It builds asymmetry, fast attack craft, mines, drones, coastal anti-ship missiles. The ballistic missiles designed not to win a war, but to spike costs and force decisions. And for years, the implicit bargain has been this. Iran threatens, the U.S. signals. Both sides step back from the edge. But tonight, in our scenario, that bargain breaks. Now shift your perspective. You're no longer on the Nimitz. You're in a windowless operations room near Bandar Abbas, where the walls are lined with screens and the air smells like hot electronics and sweat. Iranian officers don't speak loudly here. They don't need to. They've rehearsed this, and their plan is simple in concept, brutal in execution. Overwhelm the layers, saturate the sensors, force the American carrier strike group to spend interceptors faster than it can reload them. Then land a few weapons, just a few, on the right targets. Not to sink the carrier, not because that's unlikely, not even to cripple the fleet, just to demonstrate vulnerability, just to create a political shockwave. In this scenario, they assemble a strike package, a mixed volley of anti-ship ballistic missiles, sea-skimming cruise missiles, and one-way attack drones launched from dispersed sites along the coast and from mobile platforms hidden in plain sight. The psychology matters as much as the hardware. They believe the U.S. Navy is confident to the point of arrogance. They believe American commanders won't risk escalation. They believe the carrier will hesitate, will defend, absorb, de-escalate. They believe they can stage a deluge. And in their minds, if the Nimitz is forced to pull back, even temporarily, Iran wins the narrative. They're wrong, but not because the U.S. is invincible. Not because they overlook something fundamental about modern American naval warfare. It isn't built around a single shield. It's built around an integrated multi-domain kill web, space, air, sea, cyber, where detection is not one radar, but a lattice of eyes and algorithms that turns surprise into timestamp. Here's the fatal flaw in their thinking. They assume the storm arrives all at once. They don't realize it's already being counted. At 3:22, 6 minutes after the first weapons canister rolls into place aboard Nimitz, the warning begins, not with a siren, but with a data packet. Far above the Earth, infrared sensors detect heat blooms that don't belong. A launch signature, then another, and another. A watchstander in a U.S. operations center sees a new track file appear, tagged and time-stamped, its confidence level rising with each additional sensor confirmation. No Hollywood drama yet, no yelling, just a human being staring at a screen while the machine does what it was built to do: connect dots faster than fear can. Seconds later, the alert cascades. Aegis ships in the region begin to build a composite track picture. Multiple radars, multiple angles. The ocean becomes a sheet of math. On Nimitz, the overhead lights shift subtly as the ship's internal posture changes. Doors lock, passageways clear, non-essential movement stops. You're there now, standing in a narrow corridor as the general announcing system crackles. Battle stations, this is not a drill. Heart pounding. This is real. Could you make the call that comes next? Could you tell hundreds of people, each with families waiting somewhere across the world, that the night just changed categories? Because now the Carrier Strike Group commander has a decision window measured in minutes. Defend only, or prepare to answer? The first wave isn't visible yet. It's beyond the horizon, riding trajectories and terrain and the curvature of the Earth. But the strike group knows it's coming, because the clocks are aligned across every network. At 3:31, the air picture thickens with additional contacts. Lower, faster, uglier. Sea-skimming cruise missiles hugging the surface. Drones flying nap of the Earth, trying to blend into clutter. This is where the storm metaphor becomes literal. The sky is about to become weather. Layered defense isn't a slogan out here. It's geometry and timing, and fuel and human discipline. High-altitude threats first. The Aegis destroyers begin their engagement, long-range interceptors leaving vertical launch cells with a violence that kicks up seawater and shakes the deck plates. The missiles rise, pitch over, and disappear into the dark, guided by data links and radar illumination. You don't see the kill. You see the absence of a track. A ballistic threat becomes a fading icon on a tactical display. One down, then two, then five. Now the Iranian operators, watching their own feeds, listening to their own terse updates, feel the first stab of uncertainty. Their weapons are in the air, but the Americans aren't confused. They're organized. At 3:34, the second layer engages. Fighters already airborne tighten their orbits. Myron E-2 Hawkeye, its radar dome turning like a slow lighthouse, pushes targeting updates. FA-18S and F-35s are vectored toward the low-flying threats, because sometimes the fastest interceptor is a pilot with a missile rail and a clear shot. You're in that cockpit now. Your oxygen mask smells like rubber and sweat. Your hands are steady on the throttles. The radar shows a tiny blip near the waterline, moving fast, trying to hide in sea clutter. Rules of engagement are already authorized for inbound weapons. You call Fox 3. A radar-guided missile drops off the rail, accelerates, and streaks into darkness. You wait. 4 seconds. That's all. A flash on the horizon, small, sharp, like someone snapped a giant camera. The sea skimmer is gone, replaced by falling fragments and a brief smear of fire. Running count matters. And it always does. But so do the ones that slip through, because the storm doesn't care about your confidence. It only cares about gaps. At 3:37, the threat picture compresses. Drones appear in clusters, cheap and numerous, designed to force expensive shots. Cruise missiles follow behind them like wolves behind a herd, using the drones as decoys, as distractions, as noise. This is where training beats panic. Close-in weapon systems come alive on the escorts, rapid-fire guns and short-range missiles designed to shred what leaks past the outer rings. On the decks, sailors feel the vibration through their boots as automated mounts traverse and engage. The sound is unmistakable. A deep mechanical roar like ripping canvas, sustained and angry. Tracers arc out into the night. Might you see sparks where rounds meet targets, tiny fireworks against black water. And still, some threats keep coming. Because saturation is not about perfection, it's about probability. At 3:41, one inbound cruise missile manages a low approach through a seam in coverage, briefly masked by a surface return, briefly not prioritized because the system is dealing with 20 other problems at once. This is the moment Iran has been aiming for. One leaker, one impact, one headline. On Nimitz, the carrier turns slightly into the wind, not as a ceremonial maneuver, but as a survival instinct, keeping flight operations possible, maintaining options, refusing to become a predictable target. A nearby destroyer snaps another interceptor off the rail at the last possible moment. The missile accelerates hard. pulling toward the incoming threat like a dog on a leash. The intercept happens so close to the water that the blast throws up a white plume taller than a building. For half a second, the ocean is lit up like day. Then darkness returns. The leaker is erased. But the storm isn't over. The final inbound cluster arrives almost simultaneously. More drones, more cruise missiles, and the last ballistic arc falling fast, compressing time. This is where the defense becomes a choreography of seconds. Data links update. Radars swap priorities. Operators don't think in sentences anymore. They think in checklists and muscle memory. Engage, assess, re-engage, confirm. At 3:46, the last ballistic threat is intercepted at high altitude, a silent kill far above where anyone on deck can see. The last sea-skimming missile is destroyed within the inner ring, and the remaining drones, no longer useful, are picked off methodically. The storm breaks, not with a cheer, with a pause, a strange quiet where everyone waits to see if reality has another twist. Then the tactical picture stabilizes. The carrier strike group is still moving, still intact, still lethal. And now the question becomes unavoidable. If someone just tried to hit an American carrier with a massed strike, what happens next? This is the point where a lot of people assume the U.S. response is emotional. It isn't. It's procedural. It's doctrinal. It's calculated. Because deterrence isn't just about surviving the punch. It's about making the next punch unthinkable. At 3:49, secure circuits light up with authorization traffic. But not a single dramatic monologue. Just orders, confirmations, execution timelines. From the enemy's view, this is where the night becomes terrifying, because they can't see the entire response. They can only see pieces, unusual aircraft movements, ships changing posture, comms patterns shifting. And then, the real asymmetry reveals itself. Iran launched a storm. The U.S. responds with a system. First, submarines, already positioned, already listening, receive targeting packages. Quiet platforms with the loudest consequences. Then surface ships begin coordinated strikes from their vertical launch systems, not randomly, but in a sequence designed to dismantle capability, not just punish. And above it all, long-range aviation moves, not because the U.S. needs to show off, but because it needs to remove the ability to repeat the attack. This is the logic of future capability denial. You don't just swat the arrow, you break the archer's hands. Targets are selected in layers. First, coastal anti-ship missile batteries and known launch corridors. Second, command and control nodes, the rooms where decisions become launch orders. Third, production and storage, places where the next volley would be assembled. Fourth, air defense radars and SAM sites that would complicate follow-on operations. In this scenario, the response is overwhelming but not indiscriminate. It aims to prevent escalation by removing the tools of escalation. Could you explain that to the world in real time? Could you defend it on camera? That's the political burden commanders carry while the tactical clock keeps moving. At 3:58, the first wave of U.S. strikes land. From the Iranian coastline, our observers see impacts bloom in quick succession, power stations dropping offline, radar sites going dark, missile depots cooking off in secondary explosions that ripple for minutes. A storm, now turned back on its creator. Not a battle, not a test. A demonstration that the escalation ladder is not a ladder at all. It's a trapdoor, and Iran in this fictional scenario just stepped on it. By 4:12, 42 minutes after the initial warning, the operational picture has transformed. Iran's strike package is gone. The U.S. carrier strike group remains combat capable, and the command nodes that coordinated the volley are fractured, communications degraded, launch sites cratered, key radars silent. Here's the tally. Delivered the way militaries deliver truth. Cold, numerical, final. Final tally, 58 inbound threats detected. ID-55 destroyed before reaching weapons release range. 3 penetrations attempted. 0 mission kills. No strategic impact. And on the other side, multiple launch sites neutralized, multiple storage facilities destroyed, and the command chain disrupted enough that a second volley becomes not just difficult, but suicidal. All of it in less time than your lunch break. That's modern warfare. Compression, decisions at the speed of sensors, consequences at the speed of machines. Now ask yourself the human question. What does it do to a sailor, 22 years old, standing watch at 3 a.m., to watch the sky erupt, to feel the deck shudder, To hear battle stations and realize history might be written in the next 10 minutes? And what does it do to the adversary, watching their carefully planned storm dissolve into a series of disappearing tracks? This is why the weapons load on Nimitz matters. It's not just logistics, it's messaging. Every canister lifted onto that deck is a line in a sentence that says, "We anticipated you. Not because we wanted this, because we planned for it." The lesson isn't America always wins. That's not analysis. That's marketing. The lesson is more sobering. In the age of integrated sensors and layered defenses, the side that thinks in single strikes loses to the side that thinks in systems. The side that bets everything on surprise loses to the side that treats surprise as just another data point. And the most dangerous moment isn't when the storm begins. It's when one leader believes a storm can be controlled. Because once missiles are in the air, politics becomes physics. So here's the question I want you to wrestle with. Which decision was most critical? The choice to launch, the choice to defend, or the choice to counterstrike? Debate below. Hit subscribe for in-depth military breakdowns.